Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Homeland TV series. Homeland is an American spy thriller television series developed by Howard Gordon and Alex Ganser based on the Israeli series Prisoners of War, which was created by Gideon Raff. The series stars Claire Danes as Carrie Matheson, a Central Intelligence Agency officer with bipolar disorder, and Damian Lewis as Nicholas Brody, a U.S. Marine Corps Scout sniper. Matheson had come to believe that Brody, who was held captive by Al-Qaeda as a prisoner of war, was turned by the enemy and poses a threat to the United States. The series is broadcast in the U.S. on the cable channel Showtime, and is produced by Fox 21 Television Studios. It premiered on October 2, 2011. The first episode was made available online, more than 2 weeks before the television broadcast, with viewers having to complete game tasks to gain access. On October 22, 2013, Showtime renewed Homeland for a fourth season, which premiered on October 5, 2014. On November 10, 2014, Showtime renewed the series for a 12-episode fifth season that premiered on October 4, 2015. On December 9, 2015, the series was renewed for a sixth season. The sixth season debuted on January 15, 2017. The series has also been renewed for a seventh and eighth season. The eighth is planned to be the series' final season by the creators. The series has received generally positive reviews, and has won several awards, including the 2012 Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Drama Series, and the 2011 and 2012 Golden Globe Award for Best Television Series, Drama, as well as the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series and Lead Actress in a Drama Series for Damian Lewis and Claire Danes, respectively. Season 1, 2011. The first season follows Carrie Matheson, a Central Intelligence Agency operations officer who, after conducting an unauthorized operation in Iraq, is put on probation and reassigned to the CIA's Counterterrorism Center in Langley, Virginia. In Iraq, Carrie was warned by an asset that an American prisoner of war had been turned by Al-Qaeda. Carrie has also been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a fact that she conceals from the CIA. She surreptitiously receives medication for the disorder from her sister. Carrie's job grows complicated when her boss, director of the Counterterrorism Center, David Estes, calls Carrie and her colleagues in for an emergency briefing. Carrie learns that Nicholas Brody, a U.S. Marine sergeant who had been reported as missing in action since 2003, has been rescued during a Delta Force raid on a compound belonging to terrorist Abu Nazir. Carrie comes to believe that Brody is the American prisoner of war whom her asset in Iraq was talking about. However, the federal government and her superiors at the CIA considered Brody a war hero. Later, another Marine, Tom Walker, is also rescued, casting doubt on which of the Marines is the suspected spy. Realizing it would be nearly impossible to convince her boss to place Brody under surveillance, Carrie approaches the only other person she can trust, her mentor, Saul Berenson. The two must now work together to investigate Brody and prevent another terrorist attack on American soil. Eventually, Brody attempts to kill the vice president as a suicide bomber, but falters at the last moment after an intervention by his daughter Dana, while Carrie becomes more doubtful and paranoid by her belief that Brody is a terrorist. Season 3, 2013. The beginning of Season 3 presents the aftermath of a terrorist attack committed by Abu Nazir's people. Carey is blamed for the CIA's failings as Senator Lockhart grills Saul, now acting director of the CIA, in front of the Senate committee. However, it turned out to be part of a bigger plot, as Saul had Carey seemingly disavowed by the CIA to lure senior Iranian intelligence officer Majid Javadi into becoming a CIA set. He later relayed the information to Carey that the main perpetrator of the bombing was still in the US and the CIA acted to bring the real bomber and the officer's lawyers in for questioning. As the Brody family struggles to live within their means amidst Brody's terrorist status, Brody himself is in hiding in Caracas, Venezuela, effectively being held prisoner by his captors until Saul's arrival. Following a gunshot wound to the torso, Brody becomes addicted to the heroin given to him as a painkiller. Saul eventually rescues him, detoxifies him, and recruits him for a mission to go to Iran and use his notoriety as the Langley bomber to get close to the current head of the Revolutionary Guard, Danesh Akbari, to assassinate him. During the initial assassination attempt, Brody publicly declares that he is seeking asylum in Iran, but is unable to get close enough to Akbari to assassinate him. Assuming that Brody will never have another opportunity to complete his mission, senior CIA officers order his assassination. However, with help from Carey, Brody escapes and is able to arrange a meeting with Akbari, claiming to possess sensitive information about Javadi. During the meeting, Brody strikes Akbari and suffocates him to death. Carey takes him to a safe house, but Lockhart, with a direct order from the president, gives up their location to Javadi in order to increase his chances of being promoted. Brody is then publicly hanged as Carey watches in the crowd. 4 months later, Iran offers the IAEA full access to its nuclear sites in exchange for the lifting of economic sanctions. Lockhart offers Carey the job of station chief of the CIA's Turkey operations. Carey accepts the position, but her request to place a star on the memorial wall to commemorate Brody is refused. In the final scene, Carey is seen discreetly drawing a star on the memorial wall herself. Season 5, 2015. The 5th season takes place 2 years after the previous and is set in Berlin, Germany, with Carey no longer an intelligence officer and working as head of security for a private charitable foundation and its billionaire owner. Season 6, 2017. Taking place several months after the previous season, Carey is back in the United States, living in Brooklyn, New York. She is now working at a foundation whose efforts are to provide aid to Muslims living in the United States. The season features a presidential election and takes place between Election Day and Inauguration Day. Cast and characters: Claire Danes as Carey Matheson, a CIA case officer assigned to the Counterterrorism Center. She has bipolar disorder and believes Brody to be a terrorist when he returns to the United States. After leaving the CIA, Carey becomes a private citizen, living in Berlin and later, New York. Damian Lewis as Nicholas Brody, a congressman and retired U.S. Marine gunnery sergeant who is rescued by Delta Force after being held by Al-Qaeda as a prisoner of war for 8 years. Mandy Patinkin as Saul Berenson, Carey's mentor, and the CIA's Middle East Division chief and acting director of the CIA during Season 3. Morena Baccarin as Jessica Brody, Brody's wife. Assuming her husband is dead, she has a relationship with Mike. She struggles to adjust when Brody returns after such a long absence. David Harewood as David Estes, the director of the CIA's Counter-Terrorism Center, and Carrie's boss. The two have a tumultuous relationship due to her aggressive way of working, and the suggestion of a past sexual relationship between them. Diego Clattenhoff as Mike Faber, a U.S. Marine major, Brody's best friend who, assuming Brody is dead, begins a relationship with Jessica. Jackson Pace as Chris Brody, Brody's son. Morgan Saylor as Dana Brody, Brody's daughter. Jamie Sheridan as William Walden, Vice President of the United States, and a former director of the CIA. David Marciano as Virgil, a freelance surveillance expert, and former CIA employee whom Carrie enlists for the surveillance of Brody. Naveed Negaban as Abu Nazir, a high-ranking member of Al-Qaeda. Rupert Friend as Peter Quinn, a CIA operative and assassin. Sarita Chowdhury as Mira Berenson, Saul's wife. Tracy Letts as Senator Andrew Lockhart, who later assumes the role of director of the CIA. F. Murray Abraham as Dardal, a Black Ops specialist. Nazanin Boniadi as Farah Shirazi, a Muslim CIA analyst. Layla Robbins as Martha Boyd, the United States ambassador to Pakistan. Sebastian Koch as Otto During, a German philanthropist and Carrie's boss. Miranda Otto as Alison Carr, the current Berlin chief of station, working directly for Saul Berenson. Alexander Failing as Jonas Hollander, legal counsel for the During Foundation, and Carrie's boyfriend. Sarah Sokolovich as Laura Sutton, an American journalist in Berlin, who works for the During Foundation. Elizabeth Marvel as Elizabeth Keene, a junior senator from New York, elected President of United States. Development history. Based on Gideon Raff's Israeli series Hatcher Theme, Homeland was developed by Howard Gordon and Alex Ganser in early 2010. The two had previously worked together on the similarly themed series 24. On September 19, 2010, Showtime placed a pilot order for Homeland as the first project David Nevins had undertaken since leaving Imagine Entertainment to become president of Showtime. Gordon, Ganser, and Raff wrote the pilot. Michael Quester directed the pilot, with Gordon, Ganser, Raff, Avi Near, and Rand Tellem serving as executive producers. On April 7, 2011, Showtime greenlit the series with an order of 12 episodes. It was announced that Chip Johannesson would join the series as a co-executive producer, while Michael Quester, who had served as the director on the pilot, would join the series as an executive producer. On July 21, 2011, at the San Diego Comic-Con, Showtime announced that the series would premiere on October 2, 2011. Along with the announcement of the premiere date for the series, the network also announced that the names of the characters portrayed by Claire Danes and Damian Lewis had been renamed Carrie Matheson and Nicholas Brody, from Carrie Anderson and Scott Brody, respectively. The series is produced by Fox 21. In September 2016, Ganser announced that he would be crafting the 8th season as the series' last. He pointed out that the decision would ultimately fall on Showtime, but that he would be moving toward an 8th-season close. He also stated that it would be his desire to film the final season in Israel, where Homeland's source series, Prisoners of War, originated. Casting. Casting announcements began in November 2010, with Claire Danes first to be cast. Danes portrays Carrie Matheson, a driven CIA officer battling her own psychological demons. Next to join the series was Mandy Patinkin as Saul Berenson, the smart and politically savvy CIA division chief. who is Carrie's main champion in the intelligence upper echelon, and her sounding board. Laura Fraser was initially cast as Jessica Brody, Nick Brody's smart, strong wife, but after the pilot, Fraser was replaced by Morena Baccarin. Next to join the series were Damian Lewis and David Harewood, with Lewis playing Brody, who returns home after spending 8 years as a prisoner of war in Baghdad, while Harewood was cast as David Estes, a rising star in the CIA. Carrie's boss is the youngest director of the Counterterrorism Center in the agency's history. Diego Klassenhoff, Morgan Saylor, and Jackson Pace were the last actors to join the main cast, with Klassenhoff playing Mike Faber, Brody's close friend and fellow Marine. Mike Faber was convinced that Brody was dead, which is how he justified falling in love with Brody's wife Jessica. Saylor playing Dana Brody, the Brody's oldest child, and Pace playing Chris Brody, Nick and Jessica's eager to please, self-conscious 13-year-old son. It was later announced that Jamie Sheridan, Naveed Negaban, Amir Arison, and Brianna Brown had joined the series as recurring guest stars. Sheridan was cast as the Vice President of the United States, Negaban was cast as Abu Nazir, with Arison playing Prince Farad bin Abud and Brown playing Lynn Reed. Filming. The series is filmed in and around Charlotte, North Carolina. The location was chosen because of film tax credits, and the atmosphere matches nearby Virginia and Washington, D.C., where the series takes place. Production claims it is easier to get around the area's smaller city atmosphere rather than in large cities, where filming typically occurs. Another frequent setting is nearby Mooresville. Executive producer Michael Quester said Mooresville is played for quite a few rural Type 1 stoplight Main Street type of towns. The Brody family house is in Mountain Brook, a Charlotte neighborhood near South Park Mall. Queen's University of Charlotte is the Brody Daughters College. CIA headquarters is Cambridge Corporate Center in University Research Park, Charlotte. Douglas International Airport, the Ritz-Carlton, the Old Courthouse, Ed's Tavern, and Zach's Hamburgers in Charlotte, as well as Rural Hill in Huntersville and Lake Norman, have also served as filming locations. Production for Season 2 began in May 2012, with the series filming in Israel for 2 weeks, with the city of Haifa standing in for Beirut. The rest of the season was filmed in Charlotte and Concord, North Carolina. Production for the third season began in late May 2013, continuing production in Raleigh, North Carolina. The series also filmed in Old San Juan, Puerto Rico, which stood in for Caracas, Venezuela. The series was also planning on returning to Israel for additional filming, but filming moved to Morocco, due to ongoing conflicts in Syria. Production for the fourth season took place from June through November 2014 in Cape Town, South Africa, while the fifth season moved production to Berlin, Germany. The sixth season began production in August 2016 and is filming in New York City and Morocco. Other media. Since the conclusion of Season 2, several pieces of in-universe material have been published. HomelandAftermath.com provides a deeper look into the aftermath of Season 2, with news reports and survivors' accounts. 20th Century Fox partnered with Audible.com to offer Phantom Pain, a Homeland story, a 30-minute audio piece narrated by Damian Lewis, which details Brody's movements between Seasons 2 and 3 of the show. Homeland, Carrie's Run is a novel that tells the story of Carrie Matheson in a series of events that take place before Season 1, another prequel novel set in 2009. Homeland, Saw game, was released on October 7, 2014. Critical response. The first season received near universal acclaim. Metacritic gave it a rating of 92 out of 100 based on 29 critics. TV Guide named it the best TV show of 2011 and highly applauded the performances given by Damian Lewis and Claire Danes. Metacritic named Homeland the second best TV show of 2011, based on aggregating the year-end top 10 lists of a number of major TV critics. The second season also received near universal acclaim, achieving a Metacritic rating of 96 out of 100 from 21 critics. The third season initially received generally favorable reviews, with a rating of 77 out of 100 based on 23 critics. But reviews became more negative as the season progressed. Hank Stuever of The Washington Post gave the pilot episode an A-, saying, "What makes Homeland rise above other post-9/11 dramas is Dane's stellar performance as Carrie, easily this season's strongest female character, and that the latter half of the first episode is exhilarating. I'm hooked." Matthew Gilbert of the Boston Globe gave it a solid A grade, and said it was his favorite drama pilot of the season. Entertainment Weekly's Ken Tucker gave it an A-, stating, "It's the fall season's most intriguing, tense puzzler." IGN TV gave it a positive review, saying that it was an ace thriller that also managed to have something to say about the war on terror. The seventh episode, The Weekend, received overwhelming critical acclaim and was described by both the creators of the show and Lewis as a watershed episode. However, Greg Dixon of the New Zealand Herald criticized Homeland's thin plotting, Danis' insane levels of overacting, and Lewis' passivity. Robert Rourke of New York Post wrote about the third season, "Seldom in the history of cable TV has a series imploded as quickly as Showtime's Homeland, and the show, in the middle of its third season, is now impossible to take seriously." Former U.S. President Barack Obama has praised Homeland and is known to be a fan of the show. Ratings. The original broadcast of the pilot episode on October 2, 2011, received 1.08 million viewers, becoming Showtime's highest-rated drama premiere in 8 years. The episode received a total of 2.78 million viewers with additional broadcasts and on-demand views. The final episode of Season 1 received 1.7 million viewers, making it the most-watched season finale of any first-year Showtime series. Ratings increased in Season 2, peaking with 2.36 million viewers for the December 9, 2012 first-run broadcast. The series has also performed well in the UK, where it airs on Channel 4. The pilot episode drew 2.2 million viewers, and the Season 1 finale drew 2.8 million viewers. Season 2 saw a drop in viewership, with the Season 2 premiere drawing in 2.3 million viewers, but the finale only 2.1 million. The following graph indicates first airing viewer numbers. Controversies. In October 2012, the Lebanese government was reportedly planning to sue the show's producers, asserting misrepresentation of Hamra Street in Beirut, Lebanon. Specifically, in the second episode of the second season, Beirut is Back, the street was shown as a narrow alleyway with militia roaming and associated with terrorist activity. In reality, the Lebanese government says it is a bustling modern hub of cafes and bars. The Minister of Tourism Fadi Aboud said he would take legal action over the lies, saying, "Beirut is one of the most secure capitals in the world, more secure than London." or New York. Although Homeland's co-creator, Gideon Raff, is Israeli and thus forbidden to enter Lebanon, Aboud also protested the filming of episodes in Israel rather than Lebanon. Peter Beaumont of The Guardian wrote about the portrayal of Muslims in the series. High profile Muslims living in the U.S. share a secret, both willingly or otherwise. They are covert helpers of Abu Nazir, the al-Qaeda terrorist leader. In other words, it does not matter whether they are rich, smart, discreetly enjoying a Western lifestyle, or attractive, all are to be suspected. Raff's works, Homeland included, have been criticized for their portrayal of Muslims. In an article for Salon, Layla Al-Arian called the show the most Islamophobic show on television, accused it of portraying Muslims under the light of simplistic concepts and as a monolithic, single-minded group whose only purpose is to hurt Americans, and basing the Brody character to such an extent on pseudo-psychology that only an audience conditioned by the Islamophobic, anti-Arab tropes in our media could find him consistent. She further criticizes the show for fanning hysteria of Muslim infiltration of the United States, poor mastery of even basic Arabic, misrepresentation of Islamic and Arab culture, and simplifying the politics of militant Islamic organizations, for instance, by conflating groups that in real life are rivals. An article in The Atlantic by Yair Rosenberg challenged Al-Arian's criticisms, arguing that they missed what made the show valuable, which was that it was no gung-ho salute to U.S. militarism and tactics on the war on terror, nor a black-and-white portrayal of good Americans versus evil Muslims, but rather a show that challenges the prejudices of its viewers rather than affirming them. Similarly, Zach Novetzky asserted that Al-Arian's criticisms was a function of the show's having enough depth and layers for someone to concoct a totally inaccurate interpretation of what the show really is about. Middle East commentator Rachel Sharby opined that Homeland's take on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East does little more than defend the talking points of its advocates, presenting even U.S. violence against civilians as necessary acts in pursuit of far worse crimes. Middle East policy expert Fawaz Gurgis told TheWrap, Homeland is poisonous to any attempt to bridge the divide between the two nations, United States and Iran. The German news magazine Der Spiegel said that the show depicts hysterical CIA agents in a hysterical country and demonstrates the paranoid tactics that delegitimize its democracy that the United States has applied and exceeded in real life, such as the tapping of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's phone. In a 2014 report, the human rights group Amnesty International found relatively high levels of popular support for torture in the US and Britain, in part due to the glorification of torture allegedly found in popular English-language TV shows such as 24 and Homeland. In October 2015, 3 graffiti artists hired to add graffiti writings on the set of a Season 5 episode to add authenticity to the scenes, wrote instead slogans accusing the show of racism. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.